Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, I'm still doing Friday the 13th stuff. It's sort of turning into Friday the 13th week because it's the only Friday the 13th we have this year. There isn't another Friday the 13th until January next year. So, because I only watch the Friday the 13th films on Friday the 13th, and I usually do all the first 6 movies after midnight on Thursday, and the second 6 movies the next night, and then do all the special features the next day. Sort of, roll into Saturday the 14th like most of the films do. But I never get to the fan films, and I decided to try and do them this time. So I'm just going to keep going until I'm done, however many days it takes. And I've spent most of the time just going through finding them, and I found 73 fan films. A lot of them are short, and they're not very good from just looking at them. But I'm going to watch them and judge them. There's a few I disqualified easily because the level of production was so low, or they're made by kids. But some of them, they look interesting. There's elements, just for briefly sort of scanning through them, they looked interesting. So that's what I'm doing. But while doing all this, I was watching some commentaries and reviews, and some people were talking, and some retrospectives and rankings of the films, and some comments people made about the remake sort of made me think about it, because I was always kind of on the fence about it. When I saw it in the cinema, I did kind of enjoy it. I think part of me was just happy to see a Friday the 13th film, and it wasn't about, going into space or demons or body swapping or, being on a boat. It was just Friday the 13th, on the campgrounds basically. And I did kind of enjoy it, but I sensed the difference in it, and I liked it as a film, but it didn't really work as a Jason film. I don't return to it. It's usually the last film I watch. And that's if I'm still awake, and sometimes I've just fallen asleep during it. I don't sort of pay much attention to it. I normally watch all the other films first, and then this is just at the end. Even though there's some parts and some scenes and some areas of the film I really enjoyed, and what it always was for me was it just felt like they were trying to make it too modern day, too contemporary, and it took away any of the elements that made it, anything that that made it like Friday the 13th unique. And this is a problem with reboots and remakes, and that they just use the brand. They have the name, they have the brand, and they just want to make a different film or a different series, and then just sell it to people based on the the brand recognition, and try and sell like the new film just to the new audience, and it's not actually anything to do with the original. So the original fans don't really get into it, and it usually doesn't have the same success that the original films or series have, because the appeal is gone. And that's what I found with this film. And there hasn't been a sequel, and everyone blames the legal issues and the legal battle between Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller, but that didn't start right away. There was years where they were thinking of doing a sequel, they were talking about doing a sequel, but there just wasn't the drive, because this just felt like a generic 2000s horror movie. It was done in 2003, and what I found out from listening to the other reviews and that is that it was actually directed by the same director who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake was basically the same film, and that's the problem. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a different kind of film. It was very rough and violent and fast, and it didn't have any of the atmosphere of the Friday the 13th films. There was no fun, there was no camp, there was no stalking, there was no mystery. It was just a guy with a chainsaw who was wearing someone else's face, the skin of someone else's face. It was just horrific. And you watch the original film and it's just ugly and horrific. There's no joy in it. You can't enjoy it. It's not a fun horror movie where you can get scared. It's just gross and horrible. And that's what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films are. When they remade that, they did that, but they just made it a bit slicker, bit better production, but it was still basically the same elements. And when they remade Friday, they got the same director, which was such a mistake, and he basically just gave it the same flavour as the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it's not exactly the same as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's the same as the remake. So that's really the problem. Now, I thought it was the same writer as well, but it wasn't. It was written by Scott Kosar, produced by Mike Fleiss and Michael Bay. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre one was produced by a few more people. That was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one. The Friday one was produced by a few more people. Sean S. Cunningham, Michael Bay, Andrew Form and Brad Fuller. So none of the producers had anything to do with the films. I thought it was producer, director, and writer for a moment. And then when I had a closer look, it's only the director. But the director has a lot of influence on what the film actually looks and feels like. So that's why we end up with a film that just feels like angry, aggressive Texas Chainsaw. It feels like Leatherface, and it's just angry and aggressive and fast, and that may make it more thrilling in some ways, but like I said, it doesn't have the feel, doesn't have the atmosphere, it doesn't linger with you like the other Fridays did. And I have never really felt the need to rewatch it. It's only when I'm doing my Friday the 13th marathon that I actually think to sort of watch that one as well. And I always sort of look forward to it because I remember there were some scenes I liked, but it usually doesn't. It's just lacking these elements. There's nothing mysterious about Jason or interesting about Jason. We know exactly who he is, what he is. He's just a guy who has been living in the woods under a camp in a bunch of caves, and there's no mystery. It's just like, and the film itself has one main flaw in that the best part is the first 21 minutes, and then the next hour and 20 minutes, which is almost like another film, never gets up to that pace. It's like they really wanted to say, hey, look what we can do with Friday the 13th. We can make it really violent and fast and angry and aggressive and, modern and everything, and just merciless, which takes all the fun out of it and takes any of the... It's just some of it's not pleasant to watch at all. And I know some people say that's the point of horror movie. I'm like, no, there's different types of horror. There's like torture porn, and there's sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the kind of really horrific films that you can't enjoy, whereas general horror films, you can enjoy being scared by them, not just traumatized by them. So that's really the issue with this film for me. It's too much, doesn't really work, and even within itself, it sort of sets up this giant, sort of hurdle of how horrible it can be, how horrific it can be, how, terrifying it can be, and then the rest of the film doesn't live up to it. So even though I did kind of like a couple of scenes towards the end, like when the guy's been axed in the back and he's calling out and they're all in the house, and that sense of community horror where it's like multiple people fighting against Jason, whereas a lot of the other films, they usually just got down to like one person by the time they got to Jason. One of the things I liked about 6 was that it was a couple, and like all the kids and everyone, they all sort of were involved. It was like a group experience, not just one person. A lot of the Friday films, just one person against Jason at the end. So there's a couple of elements that sort of worked, but then those characters get killed. And the best part about it actually was realising that the guy played by, what's his name, Mark Van Ribble or something, who was in the Transformers movie. That's actually the same character. I only realised that a year or so ago. I thought he's basically playing the same guy. I guess that's who he plays, And then I found out, because Michael Bay, of course, produced Transformers, it actually is the same character. So that guy who just made Sam Witwicky's life miserable in the Transformers film ends up going to a cabin by Camp Crystal Lake and being killed. Which is wonderful when you watch Transformers, his fate. It's like, because, you see a lot of those people in the films, you really hate them, you're just waiting for them to die, some of them. And it's set up that way. There are the people that you like, that you want to survive, people that you hate, that you want to see die, and sometimes they occasionally swap them around. Who we thought was going to be the final girl in this film actually gets killed fairly close to the end, spoilers. But yeah, so I just want to do a video, sort of like a re-review, because I did a review of it last year, I think, so I reviewed all the films as like a series, and then I just did this film separately. And now I'm sort of re-reviewing it because I think I was a bit too generous with it. It is a good horror film on its own, but it's too much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it doesn't have a lot of the qualities that Friday had. You can't really enjoy it on that sort of fun to be scared sort of level. It is more the Hostel, Saw, Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, sort of just really horrific that you can't enjoy, that you're just traumatized by. And that kind of felt exciting at first, but then on reviewing and sort of being aware of what I returned to Friday the 13th for, this film doesn't really have it. So I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the film. Do you feel the same? I mean, if you're a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan, you're going to love it. And it's one of the issues I found is the people who are giving it positive reviews don't like the Friday the 13th films. And like, this is the best one. I'm like, because it's nothing like the others. It's like a lot of the reboots and remakes where you have people who don't like, say, like Star Trek, don't like Star Trek. They'll say, I loved Star Trek Discovery, it's the best show. You don't like Star Trek, that's why you like that show. That show is nothing like Star Trek. It's the same with this, where it's nothing like Friday the 13th. People who don't like Friday the 13th, who like sort of torture porn and traumatic sort of horror movies, they'll enjoy it and love it and celebrate it and not like the other films. So sometimes you can like both, but they're different things. So yeah, I'm just curious what people think. I'm going to go. Bye.